Lauren Gaggioli, welcome to the Rich Equation podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Ashish. It's so good to see you after all these years.
It is so good to see you. I really can't believe that we're doing this. I can't believe that I'm seeing you. To give some context to the listeners, Lauren and I went to middle school together. I have not seen Lauren for over 20 years. I don't want to age us, but it has been a while.
That's a big number.
And, with some people in life, you just have chemistry where you could see them 20, 30, 40 years later, and it's just like clicks, right? Like normal. And Lauren is doing some really great things. She has done some really great things. And so I'm just super excited that you're here to share. You have launched a podcast, which I'm really excited to talk about parenting and learning from Disney movies. And I'll let you speak to that. You've been an entrepreneur. You're a parent of 2. So just so much to unpack. So excited to catch up with you and honored that you're here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is a wild blast from the past, but I'm so glad we're doing it.
Yeah. And it's kind of hard for me to believe, to be honest.
Yeah.
So
God bless social media.
God bless social media, right? Because if it wasn't for social media, I don't think we'd stay connected.
Yeah, probably not.
Right? Just
That's
life
the
has
gift
a
of
way.
it.
That's the gift.
Comes with, some cost, but that's all right.
Yes. So let's, I think what I'm very excited to talk about is sort of your journey of the podcast, because I think there's some really powerful content you're creating here about life and presence and parenting and just learning how to live life, which, even our podcast is about.
Yeah.
And how we can have happier families and how we can show up better as parents. So tell the listeners a little bit about the podcast. Tell us about how you got here, why you started it, and then we can get deeper into some of the content.
Absolutely. So my podcast is called Magical Mindset Moments, and I co-host it with my bestie, Jen Hoffman. So Jen and I connected through a business mastermind. And when I met her, I was building a company that was an online ACT, SAT prep company that I have since sold. And that was my first foray into podcasting. And I really fell in love with the medium. I think this is just such a cool thing that we're able to do now. And the technology barrier is so low. Like, you think about terrestrial radio and what it took to be a personality and share your thoughts on the airwaves. That barrier is totally gone. So I've actually been podcasting since 2014. But Jen and I were having all these conversations. So her kids are a little further down the line than mine. They're a little older. Mine are 3 and 5, like you. And Jen was one of the first people I saw who was parenting in such a different way that was informed by psychology and heart. Like, it was this mind-heart connection and about really fostering connection with your kids and changing the dynamics within family culture. And so I feel so grateful that our paths crossed, that we are aligned in business mindset as well as family mindset. And so we continually have these conversations, and it started primarily when she started reading Harry Potter to her daughter. So I've been a Harry Potter fan for forever. I used to go to the midnight book drops, right? Was all dressed up in costume to get my book and would be reading till 4 a.m. or whatever. I loved Harry Potter, but Jen's a little older than me. So she had sort of missed the boat of when that would have been in her world. She was a little older. And so she just decided she'd wait till she had kids and then experience it with them. And she was concerned about the fact that Harry Potter had death in it. She was I don't really know what the right age is to start exploring that. And I told her, I said, the first few are really benign. Just get in there, see if you like it. And she's okay, we'll do it. We'll track with the years of the houses and we'll just read one every year. And she called me a month later and was so we're on book 5 because she just could not stop. She fell in love with it. So we would start talking about like how a journey of like a particular character, how there was a mindset lesson embedded in it and how it could inform us, right? In terms of how we were moving through the world, right? It always starts with us. And then how we were relating to our kids. She felt, because her kids were a little older, she was able to use story as sort of the bridge between these mindset lessons that we were getting in like nonfiction books and the lessons we were learning from parenting gurus, if you want to call them that. And then using the story to kind of like connect everything for our kiddos and make it real for them. And so that's where we started. But then we realized our kids are watching Disney movies. We're watching Disney movies with them a million times. And so the idea of using this like lower hanging fruit to create those bridges was really kind of what the next iteration of the podcast idea was. We still would love to do something with Harry Potter, but it is, you know, a tougher ask to break apart 7 novels that are hundreds and hundreds of pages versus here's a little snippet from Encanto, right? That we all know and love and are singing constantly. So, yeah,
and
so that's where it came from.
I love that. And I think, you know, what's really interesting, I just learned this recently. I think that when somebody is learning something, if you just tell them, only 2 parts of your brain gets activated. But when you put it into a story, as simple as once upon a time, the brain, 8 parts of the brain fire.
Wow.
Yes. So I think what's really, I mean, there's evidence in this, but storytelling, not only to our kids through books or movies or even song, right, sticks with you forever. And I think what I love about what you're doing is like not only just telling the story of what happened, but like using it as a place of reflection and learning and how does it apply in our life. And not only to the kids. I mean, I listened to a couple episodes, like it's even for adults. It's even for moms and dads, and you can use it, apply it to all parts of your business. So I just love the premise.
Thank you. Yeah. Our company is actually called Seeds of the Story because it's about the seeds that story plants within us. I mean, those are real, like visceral lessons that we learn as kids and we can carry it with us. And so, you know, my kids are still really little, like, but I'm trying to teach up as opposed to like come down to them. Like I want them to be as mature and as fully fleshed out as they possibly can and to really know themselves well. I think that's something that was definitely skipped, I think, for our generation of just like do what you're told. This is how this is the what, and then don't worry about the why. Like the why wasn't always explained. And I think for myself, it's manifested with a lack of understanding of myself, a lack of a connection to my true desires. And I don't want that for my kids. I want them to know their hearts and minds and be able to really stand in that, because that's where we get these change makers. That's where we get these people who are so steeped in what they are truly called to do that they change the world. And I want my kids to be a part of that. I want my kids to be cheerleaders for other people who are trying to do that. And so that's sort of, this is where it starts, right? It starts in a family culture.
I love all of it. So tell me, what are you learning about your parenting through the process? And what are you learning? What are other people learning? Like where are there opportunities for us to focus and improve?
So my parenting as a parent or the parenting I received?
Maybe both. I think
and?
I think going back to what you just said, I think you're right in that, and this is a little bit of a generational thing. I think there is an opportunity for us to, cut off these generational things that get passed on to us, that you don't have to understand the why. Just do what I'm asking you to do and do it. And I also, I just had a education professional on the podcast a few months ago, and we were talking about the same thing, that like when we were in middle school and high school, there was zero to little focus on self-care and mindset and emotional intelligence and behavior. It was just like just work your butt off, go to the best school you can, compete, grind, and somehow you'll find success and happiness. And I think what we're learning through these conversations is that, it's the same thing about our premise is like, just because you have money doesn't mean you're happy. Just because you're rich doesn't mean you're happy, right?
Yeah, no.
Just because you had kids doesn't mean you're solving the problem. Or just because you got married, all these check boxes that we're taught to have at our level or our generation, we can't burden our kids with that same story. And so this, my wife talks a lot about like conscious parenting. I don't know if it's the same premise, right?
Yeah,
so speak to that. And
So, I mean, I will tell you, I've had very strong opinions about parenting because I got started as an ACT and SAT tutor.
Yes.
So I was.
So you saw it. You saw the visceral contrast.
Yes. And I remember, I could tell walking into all these different homes, like there was an energy. That sounds so woo-woo, but there was an energy, right? And you could watch parental-child interactions and kind of know like which way this was headed. Is this going to be a positive experience or a negative one? The craziest part was that when I went online and started teaching online and would just have email interactions, not even phone calls, but email interactions, I started to pick up on language cues that parents or students would use, and I would have a sense of the dynamic in the home of what was going on. So I think I had very strong parenting opinions. I knew exactly what I didn't want to do. I think I also had some really lovely interactions where I was like, wow, this family culture feels warm, inviting, everyone's seen, everyone feels like they're grounded and allowed to be who they are and flourish. And so I got to see a lot of different ways, that you can raise children. But I realized that a lot of these patterns were really like set early. I think also parents have a very weird relationship with the accomplishment of college. And I certainly experienced that. You and I grew up in similar areas, and like looking around at, who has what name on what sweatshirt and that sort of level of competition. I didn't love that going through it and running that gauntlet as a full IB, full AP student. I jumped through the hoops because I am very compliant, but was it really what I wanted to do? Was it really what I ought to have done? I knew I should have taken a gap year. I tried to petition my parents for it and was shut down. Money was a carrot that was dangled of like, we'll pay for it if you go now. And then, if you don't, good luck.
But we weren't raised with the level of awareness and learning about what's good for us. We were just on a train.
Yeah. Do not detour, right?
Don't detour, train, go hard, go fast, and that's
going. Yeah.
How you feel is less relevant.
Yeah, exactly. And even when you can mount a very reasonable case for what it is you're looking to do, where it is mature, it's just a different path. So something we talk about on the podcast a lot are values versus strategies, right? And so something that I think a lot of parents are missing the boat on, or at least what I saw when the kids are older, is identifying what the value is, right? So if the value is learning, we place an emphasis on learning in our family and growth. College is a strategy to get there, but it is not the only strategy. There are libraries, there are massive open online courses, there's apprenticeships, there are a lot of different ways that you can learn and grow. Mm-hmm. And so what we often end up kind of coming into conflict over are those strategies, like for instance, for me, a gap year, right? Versus going straight to college, knowing that I needed to know my mind a little more before I committed to that. Versus like getting out there and just doing the thing and checking the box and having the piece of paper. That does me no good now, by the way. I have a theater degree. Like, that's stupid. No, so I think it's this idea of taking a step back and really defining the goals, right? Defining the values that set those intentions in a particular direction. And knowing your mind is really important. And what I want more than anything is, I love and hate it at the same time, when my kids come back at me and say, no, actually, what I want is this. My daughter is a master negotiator, and I am not. Like, I am not. And so she didn't learn it from me, and my husband isn't either. We are both very compliant kind of people. When she comes back at me and says, no, actually, I do want this, and here's why, and here's like how I'll make that work, because I understand the parameters you've set, and she can find her wiggle room, I'm like, go girl, and also shoot. This is harder.
It is harder to be a parent with that.
Yeah, 100%. But the reality is, I listen to Dr. Becky at Good Inside a lot. And she says, you know, the kid who can do that now at 5, when she's 16 and has that feeling presented with certain options, she's going to know what that means, and she's going to have the voice to speak up when something is going awry, when it's something that she doesn't want. I want her to have that strong voice. And so I will deal with it now.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think something that I've been really thinking about a lot is, you know, we've been programmed with this narrative, let's say, right? And as we get older, we find things we don't want. We don't know what we want. We just do. We were so compliant. We were doing all these things to check boxes or be successful or whatever that narrative was. And then you start to experience emotion or feeling of things you don't want, which causes suffering.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you start asking these questions. And now we're having conversations, right? And thankfully we're having it in our 30s or 40s and not our 60s, 70s, 80s. But I think that then it's also pushing us to have these conversations earlier with our kids. And one of the, I guess, challenges or questions I have, and I've asked this question before, is that the outcome of being conformative or being diligent and being structured and having this level of focus also made you successful. And we don't know what the consequences are of overcorrecting that is, right? So I don't want to say that they won't be successful. I just don't know if can you be, and this is the point of this question, is like, what is success, right? I think we're still trying to understand what our success is. Is it financial success? Is it family success? Is it just that I'm happy regardless of everything else and regardless of everyone else's happiness? So I don't know if there's a question in there. I just love you to reflect and in your lessons and your learnings to that, because I think it's something that I've really pondered on, and I don't know if I have the answer.
So for me, and obviously I can't speak to anyone else's experience. For me, I've always liked a good challenge, right? Yes. And so I think that is who I naturally am. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with the Dopey. It is a Run Disney race that is a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, and a full marathon in 4 consecutive days.
Oh my, that is dopey.
48.6. It is incredibly dopey. Due to some life stuff, I didn't train, but I showed up with the mindset and was like, I'm going to show up at the starting line, right? Like, this is my goal. And I ended up finishing. I did great.
Good for you.
So I use that just as an example of, like, I will show up and do my best. And that's naturally who I am. That's how I'm wired. Not everybody's wired that way. But for me in life, knowing that I like a good challenge and knowing that I'm capable of doing many things and often not being very discerning about the challenges I've chosen, right? I've let a lot of people choose challenges for me, and I step up to that starting line.
Yes.
The thing in my adult life that has helped me is defining my why, naming my purpose, and doing it in a way that gives me a little bit of wiggle room, but also is like, am I doing something that is like life's work, purpose driven? Or am I doing something that's totally fun and just like standing to the side and like I'm running a race for me. That's for me. And being able to know when I'm standing in either kind of court helps me make sure everything's in balance. So I really love teaching. My big why is to help others realize and actualize their potential. I homeschool.
I love that.
I'm doing that with my kids every day. I teach entrepreneurs online. I'm doing that in my work. I also have the podcast where I help parents do that in their life. But I also like to knit and garden. And when I'm doing those things, that's just for me. So I get to kind of create this like sense of where I'm doing which thing. And that really has shifted everything for me because it's made it really clear which track I'm on and when I'm on it. And then I can be fully present there.
Yes.
And so am I pouring into me or am I pouring into others?
Well, I think you just hit it right there, right? Is that I think most folks, which is who we're really trying to speak to, is how can we interrupt that pattern of not being present and not being aware?
Yeah.
And being in that program for 15 or 20, 30 years and then waking up, let's say, and being resentful or being frustrated or being tired or, man, I didn't chase a why. I was chasing everyone else's why, or I was chasing the why that I was told to chase.
Yeah.
And I think, and so I really honor you for speaking to that and then also finding it and you know, working through that. And I just find that like it's an evolution that everyone's continuing to find and adjust and all of that.
Yeah, and you can refine it. But I think the thing that's different, and it's not to say that you don't get tired living in your purpose. Like if you're really pushing in a season, and there's seasons where like I'm building a course right now. It's a season of exhaustion. This is just where we are. But when you're doing it, that's something that's coming from inside of you. It's filling you up to some degree. The exhaustion is different than if you're chasing something that's outside of you, those outside wise. And I think just that awareness, just knowing which one you're doing, where you are, right? That kind of bringing that awareness, it can feel selfish sometimes. I think especially for those of us that are compliant, we're like, well, I'm so focused on me. And it's like, well, yeah, because all the energy has to ultimately come from you. And so if you're not being, you know, authentic about that, if you're not really in alignment, stuff isn't going to flow right. You're going to be just exhausted, drained, tapped out, continually listening to what everybody else is saying as opposed to hearing that inner knowing. And so that's really like, I think what a lot of this work is just not shutting off our kids' inner knowing, because toddlers know what the heck they want.
Yes.
It's just our job to not mess that up. Like if we when in doubt, do nothing. Just let the toddler figure it out for themselves or start to shape gently. But this idea of like, I'm an ironclad parent that's like shoving my kid into this mold, that's where we start to really see trouble.
I think what just kind of clicked for me too is that as a parent, if we allow kids to have that internal awareness, and as they grow up, they know where they're exuding unnecessary energy and efficient energy. So now that you know, and you're more in tune with, is this coming from inside or outside? You're able to exert energy throughout the world and whatever you want to do, but it becomes efficient. And then you know, wow, this is really inefficient and doesn't feel good. And I'm working way harder than I need to because it's something that I'm chasing that's outside of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that just made a lot of sense to me.
Well, I mean, and you hear it too. Anybody who has had kids knows. Like, I remember babysitting a little boy once and I was like, how is he so vibrant, so awake from 5:30 in the morning until 7:30 at night? Like, how is this possible? And it's because there isn't friction. There's no resistance. He's doing what he wants. And that's not to say he doesn't get upset or any of that, but it's all in service of want. Now, we have to temper that as we become adults and like, whatever. But if you're begrudgingly adulting every day, something's wrong. Something's
I think
off.
that's going to be the title of this podcast. Don't begrudging adults.
Don't be a begrudging adult.
I love it.
Yeah, life's too good. Life's too short. Like let's have fun.
Do you, as a parent, do you think about what your your kids will think about how you parent in the future? Or do you try to, like, do you have like a thesis that keeps you guided?
Yes.
So tell us some about that.
My husband and I are firmly committed to messing our children up in totally new and spectacular ways.
Yes.
I am embracing that there will be therapy in their future. And I'm okay with that. And you know what? I'm going to hear it when they say it to me. What my primary objective is as a parent, number one, keep them safe, right? Keep the tiny people safe. So that trumps everything. If I have to yell at them to make it happen, I yell at them. That, get out of the street. That's okay. But number two, I want to have open, honest conversation, open, honest connection. And where I realized that this was not necessarily something that was part of my family of origins, we're going to go into a sad place now. I lost my father in October. And
sorry to hear that.
Thank you. It was awful, obviously, unexpected. I got a text. I was supposed to be recording with Jen that morning. I got a text that morning from my mom, please call me. I knew it couldn't be good. So I called her. Nobody was up. And I found out. My daughter came down and she could tell that something was wrong. And so I told her what happened. And like 2 days later, someone in my family asked me, oh, have you told the kids yet? And I paused. I was like, how on earth was I supposed to go through 2 days with these tiny humans who see and feel everything and not tell them? How could they not? Like, what was I going to do? Hide that something was wrong? Did you really think, do you really think that that's possible? And so it just made me realize that this sense of open connection and open conversation and honesty about things that are hard in an age-appropriate way.
Yeah.
But I have always told my children, you can ask me any questions that you have. You are allowed to ask. I might not answer right away. We might have to have conversations down the line, but my goal is to create open, honest conversations so that later, when they go to therapy, when they're, 25 and realizing some stuff, I want them to go to their therapist, deal with what they need to deal with, and then come to me and say, hey, mom, this thing you did really hurt me. And then I can be a safe person to have a conversation and make the apologies that are necessary or explain the why and say, but I see why you don't think that that's right. I want that with my kids. My goal is to parent my children for the adult relationship I want to have with my adult kids. Because I only get them for 18 years as minors. Hopefully, we're going to be connected a lot longer than that.
Tell me what advice you have for parents, because I think parenting there's a lot of judgment in parenting.
Yes.
Super easy to judge.
Oh, yeah.
Forget about judging yourself, because I think we're the worst critics of ourselves as parents. But like, super easy to see another parent dealing with a circumstance and judge them.
Yeah.
It happens all the time when people are traveling. People get super stressed about traveling, right? With their kids. I'm not even going to travel with my kids because of this.
Yeah.
What advice you have for parents that maybe that stresses them out? How can we show up as better parents so that stuff doesn't trigger us? And or what I get most concerned about is that those judgments affect the way that we parent. We don't parent the way we think we should be parenting. We parent because we think that that's what they would want us to do in parenting, or maybe we hold back or we do, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
speak to that.
all the world's a stage, right?
Yes, all the words of stage.
And everybody's Instagram is beautiful,
and
everyone's
watching, and everyone's doing the selfies. No one's showing the freakouts and the blow ups and the stressful moments, and so
it's not for the faint of heart, right? And I think self-compassion is the start, right? But what I would encourage every parent to do once a day, and I try and do this. I don't do it very well, I'll be honest, but I do like to step back when my kids are in a deep moment of play or really engaged with something, and just listen and watch and not intervene. Mm-hmm. Just look at the people they're being when nobody's bothering them. Right? The good moments, like a happy moment, a calm moment, not when they're like tantruming. And just observe, because I think we can lose sight in the day-to-day of like, I gotta feed this human, I gotta wipe their butt. Like there's a lot of stuff you gotta do to lose sight of the little miracle that's standing in front of you and this whole human being that you have the pleasure of getting to know first. And I like to think of myself as an archaeologist, not an architect in parenting. I don my Indiana Jones fedora and just like dust stuff off. Like I want to see what's already there as opposed to forcing them to be something.
It's brilliant.
So I think that's where you start. You start with the human you know. And then whatever that human needs, you do that in the moment. I was just at Disney World running the marathon, and there was a kid who was trying to go on the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, and I just felt for her. My first roller coaster was Big Thunder Mountain. I bailed on it numerous times before I finally did it. But this little girl, it was clear, like they had waited in an hour-and-a-half line. Like she gets in the car and starts screaming, and she was probably 6, like maybe 7 even. Like she was old enough that like you go, come on kids, suck it up. And there are moments for that. But at Disney World, like, do whatever the kid needs. And I could see the mom, like, I was worried. I was worried she was going to force this poor child to go on the ride.
Yeah, parents put so much pressure on themselves.
Yes, they do. And the mom sat there, tried to talk her through it. The ride attendants were being really like, I'm sure they see it all day, every day. And she finally just like looked at this poor baby who was just really having a hard time. It wasn't just like, oh, I don't think I want to go. She was sobbing and scared. And mama bailed. And I was with a girl I had just met, and she's like, oh, I'd be so mad. She doesn't have children. And I was like, no, that mom did exactly what her child needed her to do in that moment. Right? Like she saw what was going on, and hour-and-a-half wait aside, that's what needed to happen in that moment. And you do what you have to do, right? And if that mom had chosen to have that child ride, that's that mom's choice. It would not be the choice I would make, but ultimately it's hers to make. She knows her kid. And so you have to trust, if you have that connection with your children and you honor who they are and what you think they need in a moment, a push or a pullback or whatever else needs to happen, 38 Skittles just to shut them up for the flight, like whatever it is that they need, you do it. But if you are not steeped in and standing in what you know and like the family culture you've decided you're going to have, then that's where we can start to shift, and our kids can't trust us because we're not holding firm boundaries, right? We become wishy-washy, and then it's like, wait, what are we doing today? Right? And then especially with the little ones, they're like, I don't know what the thing is, so I'm just going to have a freak out.
And you've mentioned this a couple times, but I think it's really important topic, like to have, we have in our businesses vision, mission, values, but we don't have that for our families. And so it's really easy, and you just said this, it's really easy to get off track in the moments because you don't have the guiding principles of how we must behave, but what's our why? Where are we going? What is the goal? What is the intention of why we do what we do every day? I would love to know your vision, mission, values, but also if people don't know what that looks like or feels like, give people some suggestions there. Cause I think a lot of listeners are entrepreneur. I'm going to turn this into entrepreneurship here in a second,
sure.
But I think a lot of entrepreneurs have families, and we know what I'm talking about here, where we stay so focused on the business culture and values, and we don't think about that as at home, and how we show up at work and how we show up at home, the transition period, those are really important things. But how can we have this at home? And what does that look like?
So I think for me, and the conversations I'm having with my husband, kids are just too young to have this. I ask them what matters to them, but really, you're a top-down organization until you're not in the household.
That's right. That's a good one.
My biggest thing, the thing I circle back to, the word I say the most is respect. And right now, that manifests for us in holding space for everybody to explore who they are, right? And do the things that fill them up. And so for my kids, often that's just like, and I have to fight myself on this because I'm very much how can I impress lessons upon you? I'm that person. I just want to constantly be teaching, which is why I have a business so that my children don't have to deal with that 24/7. But giving them space to just play. And sometimes that means we don't do homeschool, because my kids actually shouldn't be in school right now anyway, because my daughter turned 5 in October. So we're doing kindergarten over 2 years. If there's a day that she is just in it with blocks and Legos and building trains and whatever,
that's what we're doing.
Hands off, right? Just respect. It also comes up when there's conflict. I'm the boss of my body. Like that stuff. Like my little guy who's not so verbal, I sometimes have to verbalize, get away from him. He's saying he needs space. And so respect is the thing. And, it always is followed up with a conversation of we respect what each other needs. And even though he doesn't have the word necessarily for what he's asking for, you have to listen to his body language. That's respectful. Mm-hmm. And so respect is primary in our home right now. And holding space for everybody to start to speak into what our culture is. My husband and I, we encourage learning for them, for us. We show them that we're always reading and, that sort of thing. We enjoy time together. That's really important for our family culture. Doing things like
highly recommended for everyone listening. Do not just be parents.
Yes.
It's important to have date nights. It's important to remember your number one person. It's very important in the health and success of your family.
Listen, top-down organization when they're little. If the top is not working together, everybody knows it. Just watch your kids. If you think you're hiding conflict, look at your kids the next day. If you had a fight, watch their reactions. They are sponges. They're soaking it up. Yeah. And so also, if something happens that they see, repair in front of them. Show them how it's done. Show them how to say sorry. Show them how to work through things. That's a learning opportunity. So yeah, for us, my husband is really, we kind of have our own. So I'm really big into creativity. I really need a passive income stream. That's why the course is going back up, because that's something I've really missed with that sort of security that gives me white space to play. I don't have that right now. Everything I do is active. And so I realized in selling my company, that's something that actually gave me ballast. Mm-hmm. And so I need to have that. For him, financial security is really important. And then space to play together and apart. And so we kind of each have our individual things right now. And my hope is that as we continue to refine those for ourselves and the kids get older and can sort of speak into it, that we'll come together on a lot of it. And things like spending time together, the kids will be involved in deciding where we go on vacation. The kid, and that's another way we show respect. Everybody's desires are important. And I want them to know for themselves where they want to go and be able to articulate that instead of just, no, we're doing X, Y, and Z.
Let's talk about leadership for a minute.
Yeah.
I was just listening to a podcast with Tom Ballou. I think it was on YouTube actually, but he was talking about how most leaders have to be parents in order to be good leaders.
Ooh.
And he says this thing that I'm going to butcher it now. He says that like true leaders are not the people in charge. They're responsible for something like for the people that are in our charge or something like that. Right? I'm kind of butchering it, but I think that as a parent, you can't just tell your kids what to do. And at work, it's very easy, right?
Yeah.
Tell people what to do, they do it. Once you learn as a parent that actually I can't tell this 3-year-old what to do. I have to create boundaries. I have to
You
create
can try.
space. You can try and you'll probably be the one that's miserable, not them.
Yep.
But if you create boundaries and you create space and you understand, like you said, where they need to learn how to play and what the respect of the boundaries are.
Yeah.
Everybody flourishes.
Yeah.
Everybody flourishes. What in your coaching and the people that you're working with, talk to me about how some of this stuff translates to leadership and what are the biggest lessons that are translated into the corporate world from here?
So most of my clients are independent entrepreneurs. So corporations, it's a totally different thing. But I think too, entrepreneurs, the idea is we're building something out, right? So like maybe it's just us to begin with, but we kind of have to have that structure and mindset in place so that we can grow and to use your word, flourish. Gosh, I feel like there's so much emphasis on this is the way.
Yeah.
Right? Step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. Step 3, do this. And I don't like formulas.
I love formulas. I was looking for I love the A+B=C and
they're so
rows
clean and
columns.
neat and not even what happens in real life.
Well, that's the point, right? Is it's such a dichotomy, I think, especially the way we're trained to be entrepreneurs or run businesses, what it should look like. It's such a beautiful contrast between parenting.
Yeah. But I much prefer frameworks. Like give me the parameters to work within. Let me personalize some of it so that it feels like it fits me, and then go from there. It's kind of one of those things that
that's brilliant.
I think you kind of feel it when it clicks, right? Mm-hmm. And so with parenting, I realized I try often to cattle prod my kids. Like I'm behind, like even just today, I'm like, go up the stairs. We're going upstairs. And I realized, I was like, no, I said we're going upstairs. I'm leading up the stairs. And I went in front of them, walked up. They were fighting me when I was trying to push them from behind. But the second I was at the top of the stairs and said, listen, there will be consequences if you don't come up and brush your teeth and get dressed, they were like, oh, and up they came. So I think it's about like encouraging that like intrinsic motivation. I think from a leadership standpoint, you might have people who jump through a hoop and do so in order to get paid. Parenting, there is no payment. You can't like withhold dinner. People have tried. I wouldn't recommend it as a parenting strategy. But with people who are working for you or the people you hope to hire, contractors or what have you, the energy that they bring to your business matters more. Yes. I mean, yes, they might do the thing, but they're going to do it better if you're leading by example. Like no one wants to feel like you're foisting stuff off that you just didn't want to do, right? And like with that attitude, as opposed to like educating, teaching them the way you like it done, giving good feedback, giving positive feedback, constructive feedback. I feel like there's always the sandwich, right? Like here's some things you did great. Here's something you can improve. And then also you did this other thing great, right? Like trying to kind of soften it and remember that it's a human on the other side. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, seeing each person, just as you have to do in parenting, I think is helpful.
What is your daily routine? Tell us about how what is keeping you at this high vibration? How are you staying centered and grounded, and tell us your routine.
So I actually don't thrive in routine. I really like a change of pace. I like things kind of constantly up in the air. That's where I live. My husband loves routine, so we are compromising. So what we do is like on alternating days, one of us gets up early. Now he is a regular 9 to 5. So when he gets up early, it's to work out. And when I get up early, it's to work in the morning. And so I have the podcast, I have courses I'm creating, I have clients. And so just the ebb and flow, the natural ebb and flow within business is really helpful. Even though I'm waking up at like certain times and doing the work in certain pockets, it's always different work, which is really helpful. And then on the days that I work, I will come downstairs. I have mom school, so I get to read or watch a master class or do something like that while my kids play. They've already been gotten ready for the day, and then we do homeschool from 10 to noon. Again, they're super
I love
little,
that.
so they don't
I love
need a
that
ton.
concept. You should coin that, mom school.
Mom school. We value learning. And here's the thing.
Dad school. I need some dad school time.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I don't want my kids to think that I just magically do all the things. So I know there are some
takes
people,
work.
There are some people who like, moms in particular, tend to like leverage nap times, right? Kids go down for a nap, mom works her behind off. Kids wake up, the house is magically clean. And there's a gal who has an Instagram account that I never did that because that's just not who I am. I was like, I'm gonna sit down and eat some popcorn and watch some crappy TV. But if you're gonna nap, I'm gonna have a little rest time. But I want my kids to see the effort that goes into maintaining the house, building businesses. You know, Jen's son will sit and like podcast next to her because he sees what she's doing. Like, this is how they learn. They learn from watching you.
Yes.
Yeah. So I want them to see it. So they'll always see me with like a book in my hand, audio book in. Even if I'm knitting, like doing something to just pour into myself, I will have an earbud in. They'll be playing. You know, it's not like I'm ignoring them. There's one earbud in so I can hear the request for a snack. But I also teach them to wait. Like, nope, I need to do 5 more rows and then I will be with you. So, you know, there's a lot that's sort of baked into how we do life, even though there's like not a strict rhythm or routine. They also learn respect for us and the time we're taking. We explain why we work. We explain what we're working on. We talk about it at dinner. You know, there are no secrets.
I also think that teaches them a lot about not only how to live life, but like work ethic. Mom's learning. She's trying to figure out life. She's making mistakes. How did she recover?
Yes.
You know, wow, she's putting so much effort in. I mean, I can speak from myself as like, I think I definitely have a strong work ethic because I saw my parents work from home. Their business was from home.
Yeah.
If they were 9 to 5 and they were gone all the time and I just saw them drop me off to school and pick me up, I wouldn't have seen that sort of, okay, wow, this is what it takes to live life and you have to work hard.
100%.
So I think it's really important. It's a really good lesson to do things in front of them. I love that.
Yeah.
I need some dad school time.
Dad school. What would you learn first?
Well, you know, I think I mean, luckily I have the podcast so I can just learn from you and I can ask you all the secret questions.
Isn't that the best part of podcasting? I loved that aspect of an interview show. It was so fun.
Yeah. People think this is about the audience. It's not about the audience. Just
You're
kidding.
here for you.
No. So, I mean, selfishly, we do get to learn a lot, right? And we get to learn about the things that we want to learn and then create content where other people can learn with us. I think as an entrepreneur and as a dad and as a husband, there are always these pillars in our life we're trying to manage and find harmony. And I think we just can't manage them. We have to be able to have strategies and have boundaries and have intention and presence in all those aspects of our life. But it takes work. You can't just show up as a great husband and show up as a great dad and show up as a great entrepreneur. It just doesn't work. You have to work on it. So I don't know where I'd start. I think there's definitely something there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, my husband once, one of our lower points, he had just gotten a new job and he was transitioning to managing people and he was kind of out of his element. Like he had been working in software. So he transitioned to this new role and we were talking about it and I was like, well, why do you think you should know how to do it? Like you've never done it. And I was like, why don't we pick some books on Amazon or like go to the library or whatever. You can like start to just get some tactics. And he was like, Lauren, everything can't be learned in a book. Like every time you have a problem, you shouldn't buy a book. I was like, and I just looked at him. I was like, actually, that makes no sense at all. So we bought some books.
That's right.
He learned. And he's a better guy.
But learning takes intention, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to realize there's an awareness of an issue or a gap. Then you got to spend intention to go spend time and learn and then apply. And so, and I think what's beautiful about this day and age is that there's just endless amount of knowledge and information at your fingertips, easily accessible. Then there's people like you that are creating more and more great content and making it easy to comprehend and apply in your life. And so fun.
It's a great time to be alive, for sure.
It's a great time.
The best.
As we wrap up, I want to ask you one final question, Lauren. For you, what does it mean to live a rich life?
That is such a good question. I think it's a feeling that I affected change in the world positively every day. Whether it's teaching my kids a lesson, baking an excellent loaf of bread, having a great conversation with a client that freed them up to live more fully in their purpose, like that I've done something that has shifted the energy in a positive direction in some fashion. And it doesn't have to be the same every day. I think it'd be boring if it were for me. But I just really love feeling like I'm contributing to the world in some tangible fashion.
I love it. So good to see you.
You too, friend.
Tell everyone where they can find you. Where can we find the podcast? If they want to connect with you, how can they do that? And any final words to the listener? I'll give you the last word.
Awesome. So for the hub of everything is laurengaggioli.com. That's kind of where you can send me a message if you want to see the services I offer. The courses will be starting to percolate out on May 1st. So that's really the best place to kind of start. I'm also on Instagram, but it's not, I share stuff that's business because it's part of my life, but it's my personal. So it's at Lauren Gaggioli. You can connect with me there. And then if you'd like to listen to the show, it's Magical Mindset Moments podcast. You can go to magicalmindsetmoments.com or just any podcasting app. Just search us in there and you'll find us.
And the episodes are great.
They're
really great. And I highly recommend them for entrepreneurs, parents, spouses. It doesn't matter. If you're adulting like we are, they've done a really, really great job in translating Disney stories and messages into bite-sized, comprehensible concepts that we can apply in our real life. So I just honor you, Lauren. So good to see you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much.